Right, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you are all well. Thank you very much for joining me on this Ask Me Anything question and answer spot that we have here at Welcome Communications. Been particularly dealing with IT solutions, so I'm hoping that you've all come primed with your questions for me, and I'll do my best to answer them as much as I possibly can. If you do have questions that I can't answer, then I will go away and find out and come back to you, so we will get the information to you that you need. Also, I'd like to thank you very much to those of you who actually sent in your questions before time as well. We will certainly be getting to them. So the format for how the Q&A session is going to work is what we're going to run through first, and then I'll go into the introduction about myself, and then there will be your opportunity to ask the questions. And then finally, we're going to stop on Office 365 license changes and what this means for you. Obviously, Microsoft announced last week that they were going to change the nomenclature that they're using for um, their products. They're now shifting from an Office 365 to a Microsoft 365. And that will obviously have an impact on what appears on your bill. And we just want to reassure you that actually what appears on your bill, the product set that you're currently taking is not changing. The name of it is. The price of it isn't changing. That will remain until Microsoft deem that they need to amend the pricing. But as far as it goes right now, the official stance from Microsoft is it's not coming out. We will go into that a bit later on. So the format of this Q&A session is please remain muted at all times, and that just allows everyone to concentrate on the questions in particular. Please put your questions into chat. Okay, so if you could type your questions out in chat, and for the call-in users, I will just scoot to you, just make sure that we can answer your questions as well. You will be unmuted during this, so that you do have the opportunity to ask any follow-up questions that you might have. And give me your responses, and we can really help you guys out. This is a Q&A session. It's an Ask Me Anything session, so I am here at your disposal to answer your questions and try my best that I can. And if anyone must go before we get to the end of the presentation and they haven't had time to get around to their question, then please let me or your account manager know, and we will reach out to you personally and we'll talk to you. So, myself, my name is Justin Mason. I'm the IT Solutions Architect and Head of IT over at Wellcome Communications. I am Microsoft accredited. I am VMware accredited, Symantec accredited, HP, and Nintex accredited as well. I specialize in Microsoft licensing, SharePoint and workflow automation and systems integration and Office 365 migrations, amongst many other things. Obviously, I have been a salesperson, an account manager, a technician, a purchasing manager, an IT administrator, and a consultant, all in the realms of IT. My entire 20-odd year career spans just IT. I've never done anything else. So I've literally seen it all and been in your shoes and been in your colleagues' shoes as well. So I have a really good grasp of exactly what's required at all levels of the business, and so that gives me a really good, unique insight into the systems and into the effects that these will have on everybody. So that's a little bit about me. Obviously, I'm the head of the IT department. We have a team of IT people here as well, who will be able to answer any questions that you might have should I fail to. But hopefully we should have some fun and hopefully get to have some really good interaction with you guys and try and help you out in the best way possible. Okay, so it is time to move on and answer your question. So as we said, if you could type the question into chat for me, and then we could have a look at your question, and we'll go to that. We do have some questions that have been sent in, so I think it's very pertinent to start with them. So Hazel, you have sent in a question to us asking what are my views on using a solution such as LogMeIn versus the traditional VPN remote desktop way of accessing your information. There is a second part to this. We'll come to the second part very shortly. So my views on LogMeIn. LogMeIn is obviously a great tool, and it's made it very easy for people to gain access to remote systems that don't necessarily have the ability to have a VPN. Okay, VPNs are very much based on having the infrastructure around you to create a mobile um, VPN tunnel between two ends that don't change. And unfortunately, a lot of home users and a lot of businesses are taking subscriptions that actually have a random IP address assigned to it every 24 hours. And so the VPN tunnel can't be made. So this is where solutions such as LogMeIn will win out, because they can make these kinds of connections to these systems without having to have a static IP address. Obviously, the downside is that it is usually a chargeable service. It may be free for a period of time or free for a very small amount of time, and so you will then be charged. So the difference between LogMeIn versus a the difference between a LogMeIn type of scenario versus a VPN. The VPN is encrypted end to end. Okay. The VPN is encrypted from your user's end to your network, and so therefore forms a bridge between your home network and also your work network. Okay, so the two can now transmit information to each other and work together. That's one layer of security, because that security, you've got to have all the credentials right and set up all the passcodes correct, all the IP addresses correct in order to set up that VPN. So already you've got one layer of security. The second layer of security is VPN itself does not give you the connection back to a server or give you a connection back to where you need to be. So the connection on that end is using the remote desktop protocol, RDP, and that allows you to log back onto your systems, which is obviously controlled by your server, and therefore it allows you to be authenticated by your Active Directory and by your internal systems, and allows you to gain access to what you would normally gain access to. So there's two forms of authentication right there. There are two forms of security that allow you to continue using your systems in a secure manner. Whereas LogMeIn, first of all, it's got to sit on your PC and make outbound connections to the LogMeIn servers. That's fine. But then the problem is you're putting all your eggs into that one LogMeIn basket, and then you're hoping that your credentials will not be stolen or reused. So the problem with something like LogMeIn is that if your credentials are stolen, if your credentials are phished, and there's plenty of phishing scams going around via email, if those credentials are stolen, they've got then access to your systems. And typically, the systems are they're already logged in, they're already switched on, and so therefore there's no more authentication required other than getting access to your LogMeIn username and password. And so you've got a security risk there. And you're hoping that your user that is set up to use LogMeIn is not reusing that password somewhere else, like an email address at home or their iCloud account or their Facebook account or something like that. So you're hoping that that account won't be reused elsewhere. You're putting a lot of faith in users, and we've got to make sure that we're taking care of your users. We need to make sure that they are changing your passwords regularly. We need to make sure that they are using upper and lowercase, and all these different security elements. So therefore, would we prefer to do VPN over LogMeIn? Absolutely, categorically, yes, we would, without a doubt. Now, Hazel, the second part of your question was regards to having client software installed on a PC at a remote location, using a VPN to then hook that client application up to a database back at the server end. So there is a severe problem with this, and it terminates in being very, very slow response times. So the responses that you get back from the server or the database or the application that you're using, the response times are very, very, very slow. Um, the reason for this is because you're depending on uploads from the client side and uploads from the server end as well. And you got to think there's going to be numerous people doing this and logging on, and there's a lot of information that's being transferred. So every time somebody wants to double click into a subfolder on your server, then it's got to send the credentials across to say that you've got the credentials to do that. So there's a lot of noise and a lot of traffic that's going on, which over a gigabit network that you usually have in your office is absolutely fine. No problem at all with that. We've got the bandwidth to do that. But when you've only got 20 meg upload, so you've got less than a tenth available to you, um, that is a real problem, and your users will notice that. You also have the problem of, as your data is requested from the server uses various different protocols to talk to that data, and not all those protocols understand about the VPN and about that data and where it's got to come from as well. So there are translation problems which can lead to errors as well. So it's very much a case of it's much better to remotely access a PC on site and get the information that way, because that computer's gigabit back to the server. It's really, really fast. And then what's actually coming back to the remote PC is only just a picture. And so it's actually just kilobytes of information. Rather than megabytes, it's just kilobytes of information. So therefore, it is much faster to use a client machine at the other end to remote onto. If you don't have a client machine, you can have a server as well. You can have a remote desktop server. And Microsoft has come out with a new virtual desktop as well in their Microsoft 365 packages, which we'll look later on. And so you can do that and host your information up there. Typically, the recommendation is 100 meg lease line for running apps over a VPN tunnel. And the cost of that is quite high. And when you've got lots of people remoting on as well, you've got to think they've all got to share that pipe as well. So it will condense down. Okay, Emma, is cloud storage secure, or is it best practice to back my data on a physical hard drive? Cloud data is secure-ish. So cloud data is secure, first of all. It is removed off-site using TLS 1.2 encryption. So everything that comes from your server and goes up to the internet is all encrypted. Nobody's going to read it in transit. When it gets to the other end, it is unencrypted and obviously then stored. Certain vendors do allow you to have encrypted storage, so you can pay extra and have your backups encrypted as well. And certain backup vendors support encryption as standard as well. So when it moves up, it is encrypted. So therefore, without those decryption keys, then without a doubt, there is definitely a problem. And if anybody did get access to it, they couldn't access that data. They couldn't actually read your backup. The reason why I said that it's possibly insecure, in as much as you are asking for your data to be stored off-site, and that's usually guarded by a username and password. And so you've got to have faith in where you're putting that data. Now, I've seen a lot of cloud solutions come onto the market recently, and they're very, very well priced. And some of them from independent people, some of them from big corporations. And so you've got to look at where that data is being stored and how likely is it to be interfered with. So I've seen everything ranging from it's backed up to a server at somebody's house. And so then you've got to question, well, who's got access to that server in that house? What happens to my data if there is something wrong with that house? It burns down, for instance, or there is a falling out with the supplier, and they're not willing to give you the data back. There's lots of questions that come around now. But if you're using somebody reputable, like for instance, we use Datto for our SaaS backup, which is our cloud backup for Office 365, and we use Datto as well for our cloud backup for servers and PCs. Datto use the Equinix data center. Equinix is a very large company who just provide data centers for people such as Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all the big players in the market. So you can be assured that Microsoft have done their due diligence, Amazon have done their due diligence, and they are going to a data center that is locked down and it is secure. And so that information then is going to be stored on one of their servers. Now, you won't get a server to yourself when you back up. You won't get a server to yourself. You will be shared with other people, and the VMs, the virtual machines that will be holding your data, they will be encrypted as well. Okay, so there is a lot of encryption going on. So even if the hard drives were taken out and were plugged into a different machine, they wouldn't be able to read or decrypt your data. If it's in a secure data center, like the Equinix data centers are, then you will not be able to gain access to them. Everything is double checked. Hard drives are shredded with 2 people watching and serial numbers cataloged, and even they are webcammed as they are shredded as well and recorded as evidence. So you could be assured that those data centers are being staffed by professionals. They have the budget of probably Wellcome Communications annual turnover to actually just focus on security. So if anybody did try to hack your password, if anybody did try to brute force attack their way onto their network, there is not only probably some of the best firewalls out there on the market right now. There's also a team of people 24/7 around the clock looking at those firewalls to make sure that there is no intrusion or no unauthorized activity going on. But that said, it did still come down to the fact that if you do have a username and password, you do have access to it. If those details are compromised, then very much so it can be weak. But it's the same as anything. For a hard drive backup for a physical server, it's very nice that you can go and actually touch your data and pick it up and put it in your handbag, put it in your briefcase, put it in your backpack, and take it home knowing that your data is safe. But the problem comes is when you are rushed, you're trying to get out of the office, you're on the phone till late, you've got to run, and you didn't have time to pick up the backup and you forgot about it. The following day you're out of the office, and then it's the weekend, and before you know it, the backup drive just never gets taken home. And that becomes a real problem. And I've experienced it firsthand for myself as well, where a customer never took their backups home. And over the course of the weekend, their generator failed and the factory actually burned down to the ground. There was nothing left of the factory. And so when they phoned me and went, Justin, we need your help. I said, great. My question was, where's your backup? And of course, it was in the building that was lying in ashes. So you're putting a lot of faith in people to do that job, and you put a lot of faith in people to make sure that they take it home and bring it back again, because that's always another concern as well. And then that hard drive may get dropped in transit and whatever else. It could have a hard life, so you're never too sure whether you can recover from it. We use, as I said before, Datto, and Datto will actually take your backup, put it into the cloud, and then actually bring your backup online in the cloud and take a screenshot to say, right, that backup actually worked. So it's tested your backup, because it's all very well moving it to the cloud, but then is your backup actually working? And that's why we partner with Datto, so that we can. So that's what we do. Okay. So we have Kevin has asked, we have a number of phones and iPads, and you're using MaaS 360. Is it recommended to have anti-malware software installed? Which one is best for Apple devices? So, first of all, it's important to understand MaaS 360 does have a MTM, a mobile threat management. So you can actually upgrade to MaaS 360 MTM, and that will have the threat management covered for you. MaaS 360 is a mobile device management solution, which you can lock down your mobile phones and only permit certain apps, and automatically deploy settings into the phones. What antivirus to have on a mobile phone? Well, it's definitely recommended that you do have some kind of threat manager installed on the phone, but it's also important to understand the way that Apple do um, Apple do their applications. Apple sandbox each application, which means that the application can have access to the hardware, but it doesn't know about any other application that's installed. So because of that reason, and Apple actually locks it down so it can't, because of that reason, there is no antivirus software available to download from the Apple Marketplace. And the reason for this is because this container that it's in means that it can't scan the other apps to see what they're doing and see what they're up to. So the mobile threat managers, what they tend to do is they're looking at the usage of the fingerprint scanner. They're looking at the usage of your your cameras on your phone. They're looking at the usage of your location. And so it's monitoring these things and going, well, hang on a minute, something's just popped up saying I want access to this mobile phone camera, and it's never requested that before, and it's been installed for quite a long while. Why are we getting this request for the camera now? And so these mobile threat managers, what they actually do is they jump up and down and go, hang on a minute, this isn't right. They now want access to your call list. Well, this has been installed for quite a while. Why would they want to do that? And so it's important that you understand, first of all, there are no antiviruses for iOS devices, but the mobile threat manager is extremely good at detecting unauthorized things like this, taking your keychain, taking your password, taking your fingerprint, your photograph, your location. It's very good at knowing which applications should and shouldn't have access to that. And when it finds out an application is trying to change their permissions, it will jump up and down as well, just making sure that that's what you want to do. So is it important to have? Absolutely. You use your phone now more than anything for mobile banking, for your personal information, for corporate information, for your location services. You're using the camera. All these kinds of things are being used right there on the mobile phones. And so it's imperative that you secure these mobile phones up. Apple, Android, doesn't matter. They need security. I hope that answered your question. Right, let's move on. So here's a question that's come in. They already have Intune as part of their Microsoft Office 365 subscription, and would just like to start using it. And any quick start hints and tips appreciated. Right. Okay. Again, Microsoft Intune is Microsoft's version of an MDM solution to manage people's mobile phones. Um, you use Intune in a very similar way to the rest of them. So you set up security groups. These groups can be dynamic in as much as it detects it's an Android phone and puts it in the Android dynamic group, or detects it as an iOS phone and puts it in the iOS dynamic group. And that allows you then to push updates to Androids that are different to Apple devices. And so you can have that set up, and we recommend you do that. And it also goes a bit more granular, and you can start saying, right, okay, this is a bring your own device, so it's not onboarded into the corporate infrastructure, but it is using a corporate application. At which point you could then stop those apps from being installed on the device if you don't want them to, or if they are, then you can use them with a secondary pin, for instance, you can put on the application, and that will allow you to make sure that only people with the right level of access get to use this, and whether they're using their personal mobile phone or using their company mobile phone, it doesn't matter. Likewise, if they are using their personal mobile phone, you can actually go ahead and remove their ability for a particular app when they've lost their phone, and leave their data intact. So, if they are using their personal mobile phones, they leave the company. The part that you get to wipe is not the whole mobile phone, but just the bits that pertain to your company. As for hints and tips, we do offer a full range of services, so we can help you with that. What I would say is, first of all, plan it out on paper. You need to understand what everybody needs, and don't go over the top. I start simple and work your way up. You know, my car can quite happily do a rally stage, but it wouldn't do it very much good, and it wouldn't be great at doing it. So although it's got all these powerful features, just scale it back, start simple, add things on slowly until you get it to a point where you're happy with. And by taking that time to plan this out thoroughly, you will get where you want to be with your piece of software, and you'll get to where you want to be with your device security as well, without removing too much of the functionality from it. So keeping it useful. Next question. IT systems maintenance and cyber fraud. What do we need to make sure we don't fall foul of fake email scams? What you need, first of all, is a regular training program for your staff. Okay, your staff are your biggest asset and your biggest liability. They are fielding emails all day long, every day, and a lot of them under a lot of time constraints, a lot of pressure to get the job done, and so therefore it's very, very difficult for them to look at the information, process it very quickly, and realise that is not genuine. We offer Barracuda, which is a hosted anti-spam system that will look at all these kinds of information, where it's come from. You know, did it originate from? Did it pass the SPF sender checks to make sure that they were sent by the right server? Does this server have a bad reputation? And if it does, then we can deal with that. Are they spamming everybody? And so these are all information that Barracuda picks up on immediately, and will block those messages and hold them for you, and then you get to choose whether you are going to do that. It uses AI to actually analyze all the emails as well and go through that. So it's definitely worth considering, because your staff are under so much constraints. Taking that little bit of a burden out of their hands and um, putting it into the hands of the IT. But it's also so important that, you know, everybody gets to realise and recognise and understand the exactly what the impact is, and what a fraudulent email looks like. And it's also important to have the policies and procedures around those as well, because it's all very well going, oh, well, look, this is a fake email come from our MD, saying, can you transfer $3,000 into this bank account, please? However, you know, you need to be able to spot that that's not right. It may have come from his right email address. It may look okay. It may have his footer on there, all's looking great. It's a normal request that is normally made from a director of a business. If it's not, and it's out the norm, and it's to a new payee, then perhaps you ought to actually have a procedure in place to say, we onboard our suppliers, so therefore I'm not just going to pay $3,000 to this random bank account. I'm going to onboard it in the correct way. Here is a form, we send it to the supplier that needs to be paid. They have to fill it in and send us a remittance advice, etc., etc. All these kinds of things are done at a procedural level, rather than relying on the IT or relying on the accounts person not to make these kinds of fraudulent transactions. So it's very important to understand that IT can go so far, but it's also very important to understand that there is a huge emphasis on training and making sure your staff are up to date with what they're going to do, and all the procedures are in place to ensure that money doesn't go walking out of the building. And I've seen firsthand lots of money go out of the building. One case I know of, 30 grand went out of the business, and within 15 minutes of it going out of the business, it was disseminated to 7 other different accounts, and all the accounts were closed. The money was never traced. So we struggle along as best we can, but it's very important that we train our staff. It's very important that you have the IT to help those staff who are under pressure, and it's also very important that you have the procedures in place on the back end as well. General housekeeping is anything to do to maintain our files and free up space. It's probably a good idea to archive your data off. It's probably a good idea to put that in the cloud as well. Obviously, you don't have the pressures of keeping your that hard drive safe. You don't have the pressures of making sure it's in a fireproof safe, or it's off-site, or it's somewhere, and you don't have the risk of that hard drive actually going faulty or being dropped and smashing the reader head. So it's very important that that is stored somewhere safe, and so I would move that up to the cloud, put that in there. and then you don't have that worry it is someone else's problem. So you could use OneDrive for Business, for instance, to do that, and also SharePoint. That's also a possibility. You do get 1 TB of space with each product, so you get plenty of movement on them. So moving forward, I think that's the time we've got for the moment. With everybody else who's asked these questions, thank you so much. We will get back to you personally and talk to you then. I'd really like to appreciate everybody who's come along and asked these questions. There's plenty more to be had, and if you do have questions on your IT, don't feel that you need to wait for these kind of sessions to come around. We will be doing them regularly, but don't feel like you have to wait. You can reach out and talk to us in the IT department. We're always happy to help you. Always happy to discuss your business and your security and point you in the right direction. Even if it is a case of you need to adjust your policies and procedures internally and we don't earn any money out of it, I would much rather sleep well at night knowing that you guys are sorted. So we're going to move on. Finally, we're going to talk about our Office 365 and our Microsoft 365 now, which is excellent. So we have here a list of SKUs from Microsoft, and as you can see, Office 365 Business Essentials is now going to be renamed to Microsoft 365 Business Basic. Okay, this still has the same versions all in them. Still everything the same. Nothing is going to change as in regards to functionality. You're going to have the same licenses you did have before. Under Business Essentials, it is literally just a name change. Okay, so it's going to Business Basic. And likewise with Business Premium as well. Business Premium is stopping exactly the same. You still get Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and a copy of Office to download and install on your PC. That is Office 365 Business Premium. It is now called Microsoft 365 Business Standard. So for those two, Essentials and Premium, which most customers take, those two are not changing. They are stopping stationary. It's just a name change and nothing else. The pricing won't change, and also the versions that you're getting and the functionality you're getting is just the same as well as. Okay, so those two are not changing. Don't panic. Microsoft have introduced a new Microsoft 365 Business Premium SKU. And this Microsoft 365 Business Premium SKU now, it used to be called Microsoft 365 Business. So this isn't a new thing. This is something that was already there, but they've renamed it to Microsoft 365 Business Premium. So this is going to give you Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Publisher, and Access, the same as Business Premium that you can install on your PC, or no problem at all. But then it has some add-on benefits as well. Okay, so advanced threat protection is a part that is designed for hosted anti-spam capability. So again, taking the worry of that user's email coming in and being fraudulent or not being from the director asking for this 30 grand transfer, that is designed to do that for you. Okay, so take all the threats away from your inbound email using Microsoft's infrastructure. The one thing I will say is Microsoft are great at most things, but they are not great at everything. Microsoft in the past have actually recommended Barracuda, who we partner with, for hosted anti-spam, and so that's why we have partnered with them. So just be very wary. Obviously, Microsoft Intune comes with that as well to enable you to look after your mobile devices as well as your PCs and laptops. Okay, that all forms into there. Information protection. So basically, this is Windows rights management services. So it stops people being able to take a application like Word or Excel, putting information in there, and then sending that onwards to an external party when it contains sensitive information. So that won't be allowed going forward. Information protection will stop that from happening. It will also stop it from happening if that document is then sent onwards to somebody else. So your recipient forwards it to somebody else. That rights management will not allow that person to log in and look at that. So it's protecting your information when it leaves your business, when it leaves your silo, or going to someone else's silo. It's protecting it still, even though it's not in physical touch and distance of your systems. Windows Defender, so that's Microsoft coming along with an antivirus. Obviously, Windows Defender, again, they're great at most things and not great at all. And I consider antiviruses one of these areas that they're not particularly strong in. So that's why we partner with ESET. And ESET are a valued partner of us. They've got a lightweight client, which they've won awards for. They hold a Guinness World Record as well for virus detection. And they're really responsive to us as well. You know, we've worked really closely with ESET, and they've got a lot of faith in Wellcome as a business, which is great. Conditional access, so we can actually stop people from signing in at different locations. So when they're not in the office, we can actually stop them from signing in. If they're at the airport and we're worried about security, we again can stop them from signing in from this exterior location. With conditional access, you can set up certain rules. So when they are in your business and they're inside your office, then they don't need to grant a second form of authentication. They can just use a conditional access to say, hey, look, he's inside our building, he's at the office. Therefore, we don't need to be so hard on security checks, because if some random person was in our office, we would notice that they're there. So conditional access makes it really nice and simple for people to set up extremely complex rules so that people can use their mobile phone externally, but they can't when they're abroad, for instance, or they are inside the office, and therefore we can disable the two-factor authentication because they're inside the office, it's fine. And finally, Windows Virtual Desktop. So Windows Virtual Desktop, Microsoft are giving you a virtual desktop in the cloud. A Windows 10 and a Windows 7 version will be available to you, so you'll be able to run your programs up in the cloud, which is great. There are some caveats and some gotchas that you need to watch out for as you go through that kind of setup. But again, I think that's something that a lot of high-level users will be using. So if you do have requirements for Windows Virtual Desktop, come and have a chat with us. We'll go through your requirements and we'll go through the gotchas and make sure that we can get this deployed for you correctly. Okay, so finally is the Microsoft 365 apps. Okay, and this is just literally Office 365 Business has now been renamed. So as I said before, the names are changing, the prices and the functionality are not. Okay, that is the latest from Microsoft that they've given us. The prices and functionality is not changing. It's just a name change to bring everything into alignment for Microsoft. You're going to see a lot more integration with Microsoft Azure, which a lot of these advanced threat protection, Intune, information management, Defender, conditional access, and virtual desktop rely heavily on Azure. And so I definitely recommend that you synchronize your on-premise AD with Office 365 and Azure to get your presence up there in the cloud ready, because it's all something that going forward it will all rely on. Right, that brings us to the end of this Ask Me Anything webinar. I really do appreciate all your time, and I appreciate all your questions. And to those who questions I never got around to, I'm really sorry. We will do this again, or we'll follow up with you privately. And don't forget, if you want to get hold of us, you can email us at itsolutions@wellcome.co.uk. Or you can contact your account manager. You can just phone on the normal 0800 064 6464 number and get through to your account manager, or you can speak with me directly as well. I am at your disposal, and I'm very, very happy to take your calls and see how we can help you and your organization. So once again, I'd like to thank you very, very much for sticking around, and I really appreciate your time and effort today, and I hope to see you all again very soon. All the best.